took the opportunity to show me some of the watches he had, and he kind of floored me. He took me over to the Patek table and said, I want to show you a watch I just sold for $250,000. And I said to myself, all right, that's outside my pay grade, but at the same time, I had a greater appreciation. It led me to start reading, and at the same time, eventually watching videos.
Okay.
Things like yours. And it gave me a great deal of understanding of what watches were about, why people might want them, and I've been very fortunate over the last, I'd say, 7-8 years to start to develop a collection.
So in less than a decade, starting with the trip to a watch shop in St. Thomas, Steve, our collector of the night, started to amass a collection that is not limited to what you see here, but nevertheless includes Zenith, Jaeger-LeCoultre, Breguet, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, and Vacheron Constantin, plus one he built himself, and we'll get to that in a moment. But let's start with some of the watches that I think embody the ultimate in character. These are not necessarily the highest end watches in your collection, but we've got to start with this Cimier Bigmatic 16. I'm going to put this up on our macro camera. Guys, this is what happens when you build your own watch. How did you come to this?
Well, I'd always wanted to take a trip through the valley, Jura Valley, and to see some of the watch companies and understand more what it's actually like to make a watch. And then I found out, well, you could actually take a course.
Okay.
And there are a number of them in Geneva. And I said, well, if I'm going to make a watch, can I get to keep it? So that was one criteria I had to find, and the different places that did it. Would I be able to walk out with what I made? The second one that I eventually found that was important to me is this watch something that is on the marketplace? In other words, is there a representation of this brand somewhere else than just on a certificate that says you made this watch with them? And this is a company that is available. It's known more in the Asian market and I guess in other Eastern European areas. They make a fair number of watches, and I decided I was going to go ahead and try my hand on it. And I can tell you, in about 6 hours, I discovered why I would never do it again. But at the same time, it was a tremendous opportunity. I had a lot of fun, and I discovered why you have to really respect people like Mike Michaels and what it takes to make a watch.
You almost need surgeon's hands. And to give complete credit where credit is due, Steve's name is actually silk screened onto the display case back of this watch, and I'll tell you, he started off by biting off a lot. This is an automatic variant of a 6497. Let me see if I can show you guys what this thing looks like, but this is a true mutant. This is as cool as do-it-yourself horology gets. I don't know if I can quite get, there we go. He built an automatic 6497 up, including the winding bridge and all of the clicks. That takes skill. I can tell you it's not easy to get in the watch. It's even harder to build a module on top of a base movement, so well played.
It was a lot of fun, and the thing that really stressed me out was trying to stand like this or sit like this with your arms in this position for about 5 hours, 6 hours, and how Mike Michaels does it, or any other people who are doing watch production can do it. I don't understand. It's just amazing.
And the other thing that you realize is after a point your eyes start to hurt. Like
yes.
you swear you can see little micro minutia, you can see like fractions of millimeters, but you can see them for about 5 minutes. At the point where you're in like your second hour, everything becomes a blur.
It's just amazing. And the sizes of the pieces is the thing that really amazed me. I knew that they were small, but when you actually start to pick them up and try and put them in place, it's just an incredible feeling of satisfaction. You took something that is that big, that small, and find a location for it in the watch. And I had to tell you, the greatest fun I had, the most emotionally satisfying moment was when I put the balance spring in the watch, and it started to tick.
And it came to life.
It came to life. It was just like that, and it started to beat.
So let me ask, because we're getting questions in the live chat box. People are joining us from all over the world now, but they want to know, where did you do this?
They have a watch academy where they also put their watches together. It was in
Here's the name, guys. Cimier Bigmatic.
Vivienne, where Rolex is, and some other companies. And it's just, look it up, Cimier. Yes, the watch academy, and you can go there and you can do it yourself. And the cost is not low. It's not low, but if you tried to buy it on the market, you pay about the same.
Plus, you know your watchmaker.
I know my watchmaker.
So, guys, You want to go to Cimier. They are in BLBN. It's one of those split name cities. It's right on the divide between French and German-speaking Switzerland. Well worth your while at the end of the Watch Valley to end in this location. Walk away with your own watch with your name silk screened on the back, and it's a one of one.
Yes.
So, okay, now from a watch you built yourself to a watch built by other Americans,
Yes.
we have a watch from Vortic. Now, guys, Vortic was founded in 2013 by a group led by a gentleman named, I believe, Taylor Wolf. And out in Boulder, Colorado, they have...
And R.T. Custer. R.T. Custer, yeah.
And they have actually started taking old American pocket watch movements. And how do they build this?
Well, it's really interesting. I've spent a lot of time talking to them, and they're much better people presenting what they're doing. But they take Waltham watches and Hamilton watches and a number of other companies, and they find these orphan movements where the gold and the silver has been stripped, and they buy them and then they recondition them, and they create the casing. It's a 3D printing process, and they have different kinds of colors that you can get. Now they're doing titanium, and they've increased the range of their expertise on working with the watches, and they're just beautiful. You have something that really is made in America. It's something that brings to life a manufacturing process that is over 100 years old in the United States. And you can say the United States did participate in the world of watchmaking in a very dramatic way back in the 19th and 18th and 20th centuries.
And I have to say, guys, you're not going to find a better example of American watchmaking anywhere. This is a 21-jewel, manual wind, 5-position adjusted Waltham Riverside caliber in here. This thing is older than me, it's older than Steve, and it'll outlive both of us. And you don't have to say exactly what you pay, but what's the price range for a thing like this?
Well, they have, depending upon the condition of the dial, condition of the watch, what they have to go through it, I think you can get a Vortic watch, let's say roughly $1,000 to $3,000 or $4,000, depending upon what you want.
Okay.
And of course, it varies with the age, it varies with the number of jewels, it varies with the rarity of the movement, etc. But they're just beautiful watches to have. They're fun to have. They're questions. People ask questions about them all the time.
And because it is a pocket watch movement, you actually wind up with a very contemporary case size on the wrist. So you get vintage and a large size. The only other way you're going to do something like that is to buy, a World War I officer's watch that was welded up from a pocket watch, or a 325 reference IWC Portuguese. So very substantial. If you're into American watchmaking, this is a real option that you need to consider. And they're cool guys.
They really are. They're very nice. And it's amazing. I actually invited into our home, took them down to meet some other watch folks with the idea maybe they'd establish a market. They've been enshrined in the Waltham Museum of Industrial Arts or something like that for their work with Waltham, and I think they've gotten some other recognition for bringing these watches back to life.
Yeah, absolutely spectacular. Probably the most fun you can have with your money while staying in the continental U.S. But it doesn't stop there. Now, you have some interesting watches. You've actually got a Seiko
Seiko,
Prospex. This is a little tank right here. What's the story? Seiko Prospex Air Diver 200. How did you come upon this watch?
Well, what happened was I sold my Submariner, and I needed something that I could take in the pool. I didn't mind beating up a little bit. And watching people like Federico and hear them talking about the Seiko watches, I said, well, do they really think these are that good? I'll give it a try. It was an inexpensive investment in that sense, comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
For something that I can not worry about. So I wear it whenever I go in the pool, or if I'm doing a lot of exercise or something like that, I'm less worried about the condition. I don't care what they say about this watch as an example.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take that out and put it in the pool.
Yeah, and this watch, by the way, is a Breguet 5817. This is a marine big date. This is interesting because we've got everything on the table tonight, from cold forged and hand finished gold with the Breguet, to 3D printed with the Vortic, to assembled by the man before you in the case of the Cimier. And you've also got high horology, JLC, Zenith, Breguet, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron, Patek Philippe. And you've got the Overseas, you've got the Royal Oak, and you've got the Nautilus. All three of them tonight on the table. Which one came first, which one came last, and how do you distinguish between them in terms of preference?
Well, I started originally with another Audemars. It was the chronograph, the offshore chronograph. I found it, and it's interesting because Mike Michaels made the comment that a couple of millimeters can make a difference. And I discovered that in my lifestyle, that couple of millimeters meant that I had to keep sending in for services. And while that was certainly something I didn't mind doing, it's not something you want to get involved with all the time. And so I literally went to this watch because it gave me a little more substantial base. I felt my movement would be better protected. I could feel a little more comfortable with my lifestyle, that I wouldn't actually do damage to the watch. So I started with the Audemars, but the offshore chronograph, not the offshore, I'm sorry, the chronograph.
The AP.
Yeah, that's right.
But was it the 39 millimeter chronograph?
That's right, 39.
Okay.
Yeah, blue dial, beautiful watch. But while I had that, I bought the Nautilus. And I have to admit, in buying the Nautilus, it was something that, again, I wanted a Patek. It was not my first choice, but in my time of thinking about what Patek I wanted, the prices went up sky high.
Yeah.
So it became more difficult for me to acquire. This became an option. It fit into the sports line. And I liked it because it's a little different than the standard, the three-hand version. And it was also not necessarily the calendar. I like the moon phase complication on it and the power reserve. So it was a way of getting a sports Patek that fit into my collection and get some complications I didn't have in the rest of my collection. And then just this last year, I picked up the Vacheron. The Vacheron was one that I was never really a fan of Vacheron until I saw what they were doing with the third generation. And I just really enjoyed this particular look with the blue dial. And when it came on the market, I called a dealer that I've been talking to about it and purchased it about, I guess, 7, 8, 9 months ago now.
And just to be clear, guys, this is the reference 4500 latest generation. This is the third generation of the Overseas. This is the first one with the display case back, a manufacturer caliber from Vacheron, and, if I can just not block it, the Geneva hallmark on the movement, plus the quick release for the lugs. You got an accessory strap or two with this, right?
Yes, I did. It comes with a rubber strap and a leather strap so that I can shift it out. But to be honest with you, given my lifestyle, I like the stainless steel. I like the combination of the three watches. They give me a chance to move between them and keep the same style.
I'm noticing like a collection within a collection theme with the Vacheron, with the Patek, and with this Zenith Chronomaster Open tribute to Charles Vermeau limited edition. You've got a thing for blue metallic dials.
I love blue. My sad part was when I gave up the Audemars Piguet chronograph, which was also a blue dial, and went with the white dial instead in this one situation. But I do like the blue dial, and that was actually more of an impulse buy. My wife and I were in the store where we buy a number of watches, and had seen Zenith a number of times, never really purchased one, and she saw that one and said, "That's really a beautiful watch." And I said, "Yeah, it is." And that was what led to the purchase.
Now, this is a cool piece because it's got a great story behind it. Just like you've got great tales between the watches that you had 3D printed by guys you know and the watch you built yourself. This is the Charles Vermeau limited edition. Of course, Charles Vermeau, line foreman at Zenith during the 70s, hid the tooling for the El Primero in the attics across the manufacturer, and thus all tributes to Charles Vermeau feature the signature blue, but also the edition number, the edition count, 1975, as in this instance. And this is one of the great modern Zeniths, so this watch particularly.
I really enjoy that.
That is a cool watch, but here's the crazy thing. This is not the extent of Steve's collection. There's more, and yet more to come, too, because you have ideas for future directions. So let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned that you have an interest in the Panerai Luminor 1950 3 days, basically GMT 321.
Yeah.
It's been around, I want to say, since 2009. It's a strong core 44 millimeter steel Panerai, automatic winding with a complication. Are you ready to take the plunge with this, or are you still shopping?
I'm getting closer and closer. I found Panerai was another watch like Vacheron that I didn't find enjoyable initially. I kept looking for some variety within Panerai. And but then when I learned more about the history, in part listening to folks like yourself talking about Panerai, it got to the point where I said, this is really a watch that I can relate to in some way, and I enjoy the design. And so then it came to the question of which one of all the Panerai that are out there that will be one that I want. And I was struggling with the different sizes. I felt, well, Panerai started out as a military watch for frogmen.
Yeah.
And so I wanted something with some water resistance. I wanted something with some size and bulk. but I wasn't sure about the 47 versus the 44, and titanium versus steel. So now, and also I wanted something with some flexibility. So I think the 1312 is one that comes with the new 9010 movement. The 312 comes with the original 9000 movement. And it's a 2.5 millimeter difference, and that's what I'm kind of playing with now. Do I want that thinner watch that has a little more versatility, or I want the Panerai effect of the size on your wrist?
And I think Jesse even has the 1312 ready to call up for us. It's an interesting watch because it combines a couple of recent trends in Panerai design. First, the heavy use of the simulated patina dial. It's got a nice warm effect. It still glows because it's Luminova. The use of a little bit of a blue accenting in the second hand.
In the second hand, yeah.
Which is something they're doing more and more lately. I think when it's a large hand, like center seconds on a chronograph, it's a little overpowering.
Yeah.
In sub-seconds, it's almost perfect. And then there's the proportions of the case. Like you mentioned, with the 9010, it's thinner on the wrist, but you still get the refinement of the in-house caliber, and it's arguably tougher than before with the full balance bridge. So I think Jesse even has the 9010 caliber for us. 3-day, I think the only reservation you had was by making it a little thinner, have they created something maybe a little effete and over-refined?
Yeah, that's a concern, because that's one thing I liked about the Panerai. And I have had, and I still have, some very bulky watches. I had a Hublot for a while. I have the Good Planet, Omega Planet Ocean, a beautiful watch, but at the same time, chunky. And I said, well, I want something with a little bit of versatility. And that's why I looked at the 9010 movement as possibly giving me that. But at the same time, am I taking away from the Panerai? And I looked at the Duo, and my issue there was too flat, too narrow. This is really not what a Panerai is to me.
I know OJ Watley following us live, and by the way, OJ is manning the chat box tonight, guys. OJ is not a fan of any Panerai that is excessively thin, excessively refined, or excessively upscale. So I think he would approve of your choice of the 1312. I know he likes automatic and a date. Also, it's important to note, these days Panerai watches are priced as luxury products.
Yeah.
The day of being able to buy a Panerai new for $3,500 are like so 2001. You want to make sure you're getting the watchmaking credibility in addition to the image, and I think you get that with the 1312.
Yeah.
Now, other considerations, I know we talked a little bit about Lange and maybe expanding the collection to include a pure dress watch and a member of the Saxomat caliber family. So I proposed two potential directions for you. We talked a little bit earlier. The Langematic 30127. So you're talking early 90s to early 2000s, 37 millimeters. You've got the micro rotor caliber L921, and I think it's L921-1 in this instance. Is a 37 millimeter watch too small in this day and age at $13,000 to $15,000 US pre-owned? Does that suit your taste, or is it maybe a step beneath what you expect?
I think that's the one thing I have to deal with, because as you can see, a lot of my watches have a fair amount of girth to them.
Yeah.
And I'm used to wearing a larger watch. My wrist size is about 7 3/8 inches, so I can handle something bigger. At times I feel like a 36 millimeter, 37 millimeter starts to get lost. And so I really need to figure that out when that's too small. I feel comfortable with a 38 or 39, and certainly when you get to 40. But then you're also talking about a different category of watches within the Lange family. And that's where I've run into some issues. Now, not necessarily on the pre-owned, I know less about that. But looking at some of the newer versions of the Lange, when you start talking about a 40, 41, you're getting into higher prices.
Now, the thing about Lange pre-owned is that just like with new Lange, there's really a floor to how low they can go. You're never going to see them kicking around for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to make a fairly substantial commitment price-wise. Like you could go with the 30127, but you could also go with the Langematic outsized date, the 30827. And this is a watch from the late 90s through late 2000s, so by most measures, it's still a contemporary watch.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more quintessentially Lange, I'm going to say, because of the double-digit date, which is sort of a signature of the brand. Does the fact that it's closer to the core of the company's stylistic identity make it more palatable despite the size?
You'll notice that a lot of my watches are ones that are more iconic, certainly with the AP and the Royal Oak. I have an Omega Seamaster, a Speedmaster rather, which is the Moon watch, iconic watch. I try and get things, and the Nautilus is also sort of iconic within that.
Nautilus, Royal Oak, Overseas, Breguet Marine. I mean, you're really not leaving much on the table in terms of icons from those brands. If you were to buy just one, each one is representative.
Yes. And so the idea of what you're describing for the Lange certainly be something that would make sense to me within my collection. Because I do appreciate that. I appreciate the history of the watches and the watch companies, and I appreciate where they established themselves and made a name for themselves, a recognizable one within the watch industry. So that would certainly do it for me.
Now, it's interesting to make this discussion when you're comparing new watches to pre-owned watches. The idea is that a well-maintained watch will last 300 years. So when we're talking about a decade, when we're talking about 5 years, 8 years, individual condition matters a lot more than whether it's a new or an old watch. I've seen watches sit around boutiques for 5 years and pass into the hands of their first client, and the first owner of that watch has to send it back to the factory on a warranty because it's sat for so long. I've seen pre-owned watches come to market that have been worn once or twice, factory serviced, and then they went up for sale. So a lot of the choice in terms of how to expand a collection this comprehensive is going to come down more to adding an iconic piece than adding a new piece necessarily.
Exactly. I've been fortunate that I've picked up a lot of the pieces I have here as new. I don't know if you want to show this right now.
Let's do a wrist check, guys. We're doing wrist shots now.
And a shout out in my situation to Jason for helping me get this.
Jason Main of our staff.
Yep. You want to do that?
Oh,
You know
yeah.
where that is?
We'll do the honors
It's
here.
Roger Dubuis Easy Diver, one that I picked up. Happened to see it on the website and said, that looks like an incredibly beautiful watch. And so I called, got hold of Jason. He found it for me, sent me some pictures, saw the review that you had done of a like watch. I'm not sure it was exactly the same one. And I ended up talking to some other friends about watches. I mentioned, have you ever seen the Easy Diver? And the person I was talking to basically ended up saying, you have an Easy Diver? And I said, no, not yet. But it made me feel more comfortable with the brand and with this particular watch. And it also got me more comfortable with the idea of buying used. I always bought new. And so the idea that you could find a watch that was in such impeccable condition and at a reasonable price because of the discounting of the depreciation of the watch and the demand for it, that it really makes sense. So I much less fear, especially if you go with a company that has been recognized for its value in providing really outstanding pre-owned watches. I certainly wouldn't just go anywhere to do that. I've found your services fantastic in that regard, and Jason's, and so I feel very comfortable that a pre-owned product with you and what you want would be something I could live with very well.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, Steve, and I can echo that. I've bought watches basically every way you can buy a watch. I've bought from other collectors, I've bought pre-owned, I've bought new. And it really comes down to just finding a counterparty you can trust. And once you've done that, it's just a matter of working out the terms of the deal. But trust comes first because the trust in the person reflects directly on the integrity of the product. So now we've got a couple of interesting other options. I thought I would throw in, because I'm a fanboy of independent brands and I like the NOMOS folks. And this is not a typical NOMOS, but the NOMOS Lambda Tiefblau. Now, NOMOS has many blau. So they've got the Atlantic, they've got Signal Blau, they've got Nachtblau, and they've got Tiefblau. And this is the 2013 NOMOS Lambda. Basically, their ultra haute de gamme $20,000 white gold 42 millimeter 82-hour power reserve dress watch. It's unlike any other NOMOS except in the design ethic, which is minimalist. They call it Deutsche Werkbund, pre-Bauhaus. That's how nerdy they get. And it's also got the caliber DUW 1001, 84-hour power reserve, 29 jewels, hand-decorated, hand-engraved balance cock, black polished swan's neck, plus jewels set in screw-fixed gold chatons. So you're almost getting a little bit of Lange here, but whereas I was saying there's sort of a floor to where Lange will go price-wise, for $20,000, you will not be able to get as much from Lange as you'll be able to get from NOMOS with the Lambda. What do you think of this watch?
When you showed it to me, it's a very interesting watch. It's something that I have to think about. Normally, when I've looked at NOMOS before, it's a little too stark for me.
Yeah.
This, with the blue and the way some of the subdials are set, gives you a little diversity on the face, a little range of activities going on, and not just straight hour hand, minute hand, second hand. And so I do appreciate that. It's something I would consider. But right now, I would say I would look more into some of the Lange watches that you're talking about first, but certainly keeping that in mind.
Yeah, this is a nice watch because it's a minimalist bezel, minimalist lugs, maximalist style, but with minimalist details. So this is an interesting one to consider if you're in that, Glasuta original upper range price. If you're looking at Lange, if you're maybe considering even like a custom from Lange & Heine. Definitely look at this. Again, it goes up against the best from the likes of Moritz Grossmann. This is a really high-end German hand-finished movement from a brand that's best known for value, and they do give you value, but if you ever wondered what a $20,000 NOMOS would look like, this is the answer. So now, Steve, we've also got some events, new watches. We were talking about this one earlier. The H. Moser & C., the other watchmaker of Schaffhausen.
Yeah.
They've got a new Moser Pioneer Perpetual in steel. So guys, this is a steel version of the watch I said I would be perfectly happy owning as my only watch. Again, we're talking sort of a Teutonic sensibility, so it 42.8 millimeters, not 43. It's got a good sized case, 7-day power reserve, manually wound, 120 meter water resistance. It's got a power reserve on the dial side, but also a remarkably discreet perpetual calendar that you can set forward and backwards. What do you think of this watch?
I think it's a beautiful watch because the blue dial always gets to me. I like the fact that when I first saw a picture of it, I said, that's a perpetual calendar. Where are the indicators? And there is a small
a stub hand.
a stub hand, yeah, that indicates the month by pointing to the number of the month on your watch dial from 1 to 12. And it has a date, and I still haven't found the rest of it yet, but it's there. But it's a fascinating watch, and it certainly is one that would fit that sort of, I don't want a dress watch. That's what I need. I don't want a dress watch that says too much.
Sure.
I want to keep it simple. And that would certainly fit the bill and have a blue dial.
Exactly. Like I said, Steve's got a collection within a collection building here with the blue dials, and I know Jesse has a great photo of the HMC 800 caliber, resplendent in its 32 jewels and its platform escapement. So this is a watch that is, it's less than 12 millimeters thick.
Yeah.
You could absolutely fit it under a dress cuff. Dark dial, white metal, stainless steel, 120 meters water resistant. This is an all-terrain, all-occasion watch. Do you think at $39,900 from a company that makes less than 1,000 watches a year, this is a compelling alternative to the likes of Patek and Journe?
For me, it would be a compelling alternative to Journe. I really appreciate FP Journe. I've been in his boutique a number of times, a number of locations as well. It's a style that, while I appreciate, I find it hard to hook on to any one of the dials that I've looked at. And I'm not sure I would put the money into a watch unless I really had something that grabbed me about it. And the one you've just shown, the Moser, certainly is one that I think is a beautiful watch. And again, it's more of a micro brand in the sense in terms of minimalist production, and just feeling comfortable that that watch will have the support behind it to make it available to not just to me, but to whoever I give it to next.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this watch, and we were talking about it before, is that it's a great example of a small brand that's owned by a bigger company. Not Richemont, not Swatch, nothing like that, but they are owned by MELB Holdings, which is an umbrella firm run by real businessmen with watch industry veterancy going back decades. But the Meylan family has owned Moser and Haute and global distribution rights to a couple of other brands through MELB since 2012. From 2006 to 2012, I got to admit, Moser was a company that had fantastic aspirations of complication, finish, and stature, but they were probably a little bit rushed to market. After 2012, under the Meylans, all of a sudden they went back to formula. The engineering was perfect. The tolerances were perfect. They slowed down the production rate. They pared down the catalog. And the watches have just been of that standard you would expect from the likes of an Urwerk, a Journe, an MB&F. So I think it's a great confluence of stability and individuality.
And the thing I like about a number of these watches are the finishes and the movement.
Yes.
I enjoy taking out a loop and actually spending time looking deep into the movement. And so the more I can see of it, the more I appreciate the watch. And certainly if you have a quality like you do with Moser, it's fun to do. Whether that be even with the AP or the Vacheron or the Nautilus, you see some beautiful handiwork on the back of the watch.
And for me, this watch in stainless steel is just about perfect. It's overcome the last threshold of like subconscious resistance for me, which was that originally this watch was rose gold. A big colored gold watch, I couldn't get my brain around it, but now it's like, the bullet train straight to my heart. So from blue to orange, and we could be putting together like a Mets fan fest here. You guys in the US, you know what I'm talking about. Bell & Ross BR03-94-AeroGT Orange, an offshoot of last year's AeroGT chronograph, just as that was inspired by the Bell & Ross AeroGT car, and Jesse's got a great photo of that. Itself now available in orange, or I should say not available in orange since it exists only in megapixels. We've now got a 500-piece steel BR03 cased orange open-dialed variant of that watch. ETA 2894, 100-meter water resistance, comes on a nylon accessory strap. Steve, what do you think is the ongoing fascination that watch and car guys have with like each other's product? Like, I feel like everyone who likes cars likes watches and vice versa. Do you sense this?
I do. And it's actually something that I'm not a car guy.
Okay.
I mean, I enjoy my car. I enjoy having a car that I can feel comfortable driving. I enjoy listening to you talk about what your next car will be. But at the same time, I like watches that stand on their own. So I have a hard time. I had, for a very brief time, a Girard-Perregaux BMW watch. And it got to the point where I said, am I buying a watch or am I buying a car? And so I can appreciate the mechanical expertise that goes into both. And I enjoy both for that reason. But when it comes down to really enjoying a mechanical integration, it comes to the watches. And the scaling of it is just incredible. And so for me, I understand why people do it. It just is not something that drives me to buy a watch.
Like, for instance, I love my...
You like the word drive?
Oh, yes. Very much. All sorts of linguistic innovations on the show tonight, guys. We're like a mullet, business in the front, party in the back. We mix it both. But here's the thing, like with my Jaeger-LeCoultre Amvox 2 chronograph, if it had nothing to do with Aston Martin, I would still be thrilled by the design of the watch. The integration of the chronograph with a pivoting articulated case, the open dial with all of its layers and the visible chronograph hammers. I like Aston Martin just fine, but to me that doesn't sell the watch. The watch has to sell on its own merits, and I think the co-branding has to be minimalist. Unless you're that guy buying like the Amvox transponder and you know for a fact it's going to open your car, I think the link between the car and the watch has to be something that doesn't get in the way. It's nice on the side if it works, but the watch comes first even if you're a car guy.
Yeah. It's very hard for me to buy watches that are really, I would say, representative of an individual or a car. Now, there is one company and one player I would do that for. Okay. Without getting you all in trouble down here in Miami area, right? It's a northern team, and it's a player that represents Tag Heuer. Okay. And if they had a watch with his name on it, I'd probably buy it.
I will say, U.S. fans, since we're doing New York baseball tonight, I think there's a Masahiro Tanaka Hublot Big Bang, I believe. I think it was like 88 pieces with a game-used jersey swatch in the Japanese market. Definitely look that up. There is such a thing as baseball watches. We've had the Tanaka. We've had, I want to say at some point there was a Randy Johnson big unit themed Ulysse Nardin. Baseball watches are rare, but they exist. At least we agree on the car thing, though. So, jumping forward to upcoming events. Interesting things, guys. I thought we were done with the cars. They're back. This weekend, the 85th 24 Hours of Le Mans. My heart says I would love to see a Porsche win. Porsche win overall. I would love to see a Riley win, an American-made car win in LMP2. I would love to see the Corvette win in LMGTE Pro, and I would love to see the Aston Martin win in LMGTE Am. But my head tells me it's going to be Toyota, Oreca, Ferrari, and Porsche, respectively. That said, tune in, guys. I've always joked about live casting 24 Hours of Le Mans. I have to confess, this year I won't be doing it. But Petite Le Mans, 10 hours, I think I might be able to handle that this October. Stay tuned. Other events coming up. June 21st, New York, Christie's, Rare Watches and American Icons. I think you've already seen broadcast all over the internet. Yeah, you can buy Jackie Onassis Kennedy's Cartier tank. With that said, there is a celebrity non-specific caliber 250 baguette floating movement 8-day clock from Jaeger-LeCoultre built in the 1980s, cased in stainless steel and floating in crystal. To me, this is the interesting piece. Again, it's not really tied to any celebrity, it's just in the auction. It's lot 157, check it out. I think because it's $12,000 to $18,000, we're talking like Mark Newson Atmos territory. But if you want a JLC clock no one else has got, boom, tune in. And for those of you looking to drop $20,000 to $30,000 on a JLC wristwatch, there is a Polaris diving alarm in there too. Lot 212. All right. Other interesting note, if you miss out on that wonderful $12,000 8-day clock, there is a LeCoultre Atmos 532 from the 1950s in the next day's Antiquorum auction. Estimate $1,000 to $2,000. If you get it at $1,000, guys, it's a buy. If you get it at $2,000, make sure it doesn't need an overhaul. This is a case where it might be nice to inspect in person if possible. That is June 22nd, Antiquorum, New York. JLC Atmos 532. And finally, June 22nd, the same day, the FH statistics for Swiss watch exports in May will become available. So we'll find out whether the last 2 months' consecutive upticks in volume are a durable trend or just an outlier. Okay, Steve, back to the fun stuff.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a question from one of our viewers who's asking, he loves the show and he's a Woo client. He's interested in a GMT between $3,000 and $5,000, and one of the watches that is within the range, and Jesse's got some graphics, is the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean Good Planet GMT, a 43.5 millimeter, coaxial chronometer, 60-hour power reserve, 8605 steel watch. You've owned this watch, and you own this watch.
I own this watch. It's a beautiful watch. I fell in love with the color dynamics between the orange and the blue. They've come out with a newer one, I believe, that it's actually, I think, they've been more, has a more striking color balance in it, and that would be something that I probably goes a little too far, but the one I have is a stainless steel with the bezel, the blue bezel and the orange
Is it not versatile enough? Because now this is Barry N's question. Barry, if you're out there, this is your question about a GMT between $3,000 and $5,000. This watch is orange. It's blue. Again, it's like a recurring theme today, Mets colors. So do you think it's versatile? I mean, can you put it on a more muted strap?
No, I like it the way it is. You could put it on a more muted strap, but I'm not sure it still is a very robust watch. And it's very thick. It's something that you can wear, I think, when you're out and about, short sleeves, something like that.
Yeah.
I would not wear it. I find it very hard to wear when I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt. I find it less versatile, which is in one reason I'm looking at the Panerai, trying to find something that has some versatility to it. But it's a beautiful watch. It's a great movement. I'm very happy I have it. It's just a matter of finding wrist time for it.
So it's got loud colors and it's very thick. So Barry, you might not want to go with the Good Planet GMT unless you've got a fallback option that's a little bit more dress-oriented. Now, Barry also asked about the Oris Atelier Caliber 112 Twin Time. This is a 10-day movement, manual wind Oris in-house caliber. It's a watch that's 43 millimeters in stainless steel, retails for about, the equivalent is US 6,600. Cool watch, a lot of functionality between the power reserve that's really long, the power reserve gauge, the 2 time zones with AM, PM indicator, and the date. My concern is that the dial's really busy for this watch, and against the option that he has thrown up, which is the Ulysse Nardin Dual Time Manufacturer Limited Edition. I think the Oris is just a little bit too big at 43, the UN is 42. I do think the UN is more elegant in stainless steel as well. It's a lot more expensive with a retail price of about $9,800 US. In terms of limited edition, 1846, again, that's the foundation of UN. 1,846 is not a limited edition. Buy this watch because you love the way it looks, because you love the convenience of the GMT plus minus, the big date that you can set in 2 directions, the just convenience of the digital 24-hour indicator. This is the more versatile of the 2 watches, no doubt. And I also think the better bet long-term in terms of resale value. It'll cost more up front, but you'll recover more of your money if you decide to sell. But the thing is, Barry had asked between $3,000 and $5,000. Both of those watches are outside his price range, unless he can find them pre-owned. So I've got some watches. The Good Planet pre-owned is one of them.
That's right.
That fall in his price range. I want to highlight, and Jesse's got the graphics, the Seiko Ananta SPS 007 chronograph GMT spring drive. Now this is not a Grand Seiko. This is a Seiko with the 72-hour spring drive automatic caliber. It's a chronograph, a GMT, a 3-day. a lot of content, but you know, the 50 jewel watchmaker built handmade movement is visible through a display case back, 100 meter water resistance. You just have to be at peace with 46 millimeters.
Yeah. It's a very busy watch too. And so it depends upon what he wants in the way of something that shows on his wrist. I think that's one nice thing about the Good Planet.
Yes.
It's a very basic dial, and he might enjoy that. I think the Ulysses Nardin that you're talking about is a very beautiful watch as well. Again, the pricing is a problem. Between this and the Good Planet, I would say the Good Planet.
Yeah.
In terms of how busy the dial is, the price point, and also the quality of the watch. And I certainly wouldn't discount the Seiko in that regard by calling it, saying it says less quality than the Omega. But just in terms of some of the other aspects, like the dial configuration.
I mean, it's worth mentioning that to achieve a price, if you're comparing a $9,800 UN to a $6,400 Seiko, yeah, there is going to be a qualitative drop-off in fit finish, something that's expected. It's appropriate to the price. You get a lot of watch with the Seiko, and the innovation of spring drive remains an incredible attraction for those who value both the soul of a mechanical watch and the precision of quartz, plus the otherworldly sweep of that seconds hand with no steps. And the other thing is pre-owned. This is a watch that's very accessible in the $3,500 to like $3,700 price range. Pre-owned, it's a great buy. Let me ask you, Steve, what do you think of the Breitling Aerospace Evo? Because these are available $2,500 to $3,000 pre-owned, and the list of features blows my mind. If you're comfortable with super quartz, I mean, what do you think of this watch as an option for those who maybe could make the leap to a quartz luxury timepiece?
Well, it's interesting because until I started looking at some of the Breitlings and the super quartz Breitlings, you know, chronometer ratings and everything else like that, I really have found them watches that I could consider. Doesn't necessarily fit in terms of what I would do if I were to spend money. So if I rank what I want to buy next kind of thing, it wouldn't necessarily fall right on the edge of what I want to look at. But I do think that that would be something, if I were looking for a watch to get into the system, if I needed something like this and I wanted a super quartz watch, I think the Breitling watch is a great fit.
Plus, it's almost like the philosophy you had with your Seiko Prospect Diver. I mean, if you've got a watch now that you could buy for under $3,000, that's a chronometer, a minute repeater, a perpetual calendar, has a backlight, it's analog, it's digital, it's dual time, it's got a countdown alarm, it's got a time of day alarm. I mean, it's got so many features built into it, and it's watchmaker serviceable. We still see the first Aerospaces from 1985 coming in functional here at Watch You Want. So we know that at the very least it's going to be a 30-year watch. It's just tough for some guys to make the leap when they're thinking luxury watch to say, you know what, a super quartz deserves to be in that discussion.
Yeah, I think that was what I initially had a problem with that. Why would I want a quartz when I wanted to, in fact, get a mechanical watch of some kind? Wouldn't that be an automatic or a manual wind kind of watch?
Yeah.
But when you start talking about it, and actually I had an opportunity to see some of these before you even started to mention them on the show here, and I went and looked at them and I said, these are really very nice watches. And if I were looking for that category of watch, I would certainly consider the Breitlings.
Okay, so now we've talked a little bit about some of our viewers' goal watches, and Steve opened up with his current collection, but I want to finish up with your Grail watch. You've got Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, Zenith, Breguet, Jaeger-LeCoultre, and a watch you built yourself. Where do you go from this?
Well, after building my own watch, I don't know anywhere I could go. Certainly not to build another one. But I do think something like Lange would be a watch I'd like to have in my collection. And I really need a dress watch. I know a lot of people would say, well, these are dress watches. And some people say the AP is the new CEO watch, but it's different.
But their manufacturers would say those are sport watches.
Exactly. And I need something that really fits that. My Perpetual calendar, 8-day JLC, beautiful watch. But I have a hard time thinking of it as a pure dress watch. I think of a dress watch as being simplistic. And therefore, that's sort of the direction I like. If I were to have a Grail watch, it would be a very nice Lange watch.
Okay, so it sounds like some variant of the Saxomat caliber is in Steve's future. And as Lange, along with Zenith and Jaeger-LeCoultre, pretty much sits in my top 3 most beloved brands, I heartily endorse this. We can help you with this search, I hope.
That'd be wonderful.
So, guys, thank you for joining us. Steve, thank you for joining me tonight.
This was really
awesome.
great. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
You guys, if you want to be on the show, hey, email us, reach out. We love guests. And I also want to give a special shout out to Jesse, who troubleshot that system like a pro to get the sound up and running. Talk about thinking on your feet and grace under pressure. Jesse, you saved the show. And chapeau to you, my man. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the weekend. I'm Tim, he's Steve, he's Jesse. This is Watch Want, and thanks for logging on.